seen the treasurer on the screen just a few minutes ago. So he requested me to just give a quick snapshot of where we were at inception and where we are now, following what Dr. Nabanyumia mentioned. Okay. I need help, I think. Okay, so this is what we looked like. Okay. This is what we looked like at the beginning. In the first 5 years of ECOTRUST, we had one big donor called USAID, and he was responsible for 96% or 97% of the revenues that we received in the first year. I mean, in the first 5 years. But still, within those first 5 years, the organization had been designed with a plan to diversify as they move on. So in those 5 years, they had already tried partnerships with international NGOs. I think that was WWF that gave us the money to establish the land trust. But also the design for the carbon scheme had started. And at that time, it brought in 1% of the incomes in those 5 years. And this is where we are now. So you can see the difference between where we started with 97% with one donor, and 20 years down the road where we are now with 6 donor categories. And when you look, or 6 revenue streams or types of donors, each one of them has different donors. We have about 10 private companies that offset their carbon footprint through us. We have a number of international NGOs that we work with. We have a number of donors that we work with. But right now, the donor categories where it's saying bilateral and multilateral agencies, okay. So this is now our dependency on the donors right now. It's just 8%. In the past 10 years, we've been 8%. Our main tool right now is to mobilize resources from private sector, from mainly Europe and the US, through the Payment for Environmental Services scheme. So we have diversified to have these many different sources of income. And the endowment fund that he talked about, we had a very ambitious target because when we are designing the endowment fund, we thought that donors will give us money to put in this fund. And our objective was that we would have this as our annual budget. But the donors have not given us the money, and thus, like I said when we were beginning, is that we are an organization that believes in innovation. When we had the dream to set up an endowment fund, even without donors giving us money to kickstart the endowment fund, we still established one using our own resources. So these are these are US dollars. Last year, our budget or our revenues were 1.6 or 1.69 million US dollars, which is just 79% of our targeted revenues. For us to be able to do what you saw JR mentioning, that we want to have the independence to be able to decide where we want to invest, as opposed to depending on donors that determine how and where we invest. When we were setting the targets, we also set targets on how big the investment income should be, and we didn't think we would get an investment income in 2016. But we managed to get that much from the investment income. And by end of last year, we were getting this amount, which is just 34% of what we had targeted to make. But we believe that considering that this is coming from our own resources as opposed to depending on, because here we thought we would get donors giving us money to invest, but instead we are using our own resources to invest, and this is the amount that we raised, for example, last year. And still we set a target on how much we want the investment to contribute towards our overall budget. Like I mentioned, in 2016, we didn't think we were going to pull it off, but we managed to raise income that matches 12% of our annual budget. And last year we made it. Our target was 10%, and we managed to get the 10%. But again, in 2018, it wasn't as good as we had planned to be. When we set up our own endowment, we also eventually managed to get some donors trust us with financing to set up different facilities. We have the main endowment fund, which we are currently capitalizing from our own internally generated resources, but we also signed agreements with various donors to set up specific funds that are according to the agreements that we had with those donors. We got some funding from UNDP to set up 2 facilities. And these facilities are to support the diversification and expansion of the carbon project. We also have a jerrycan, that jerrycan that we are selling over there. The income from that jerrycan, or part of the income from selling that jerrycan, is being used to capitalize what we are calling a water fund. Then we also have the Carbon Community Fund. The farmers that grow trees for carbon sequestration, every income that they get, they make a contribution to a fund that we call a Carbon Community Fund that gives out grants. But it also supports to build the resilience of the farmers. It helps to support if there are farmers that are not able to meet a target because of being exposed to extreme weather conditions or other natural disasters, they draw from this fund to replace the lost carbon. And as we move forward, we want to learn from all these experiments, the lessons we have learned from all these innovations, to move towards sustainability. We would like to be able to raise enough money of our own to meet 50% of our operations. We would like to be able to depend on donors for only 50% of our work, but start the year knowing that whatever we will plan, whatever we will dream, we will be able to afford because 50% of the income is generated by us. We are our own donors, or we are a donor to the Ugandan community. Then we would like to convert the Carbon Community Fund into a climate risk insurance fund, because right now it only benefits the farmers if they've contributed to it. But we would like to learn lessons from that fund and make it bigger and be able to support even other crops beyond trees. Then we also would like to, like I mentioned, we want to be able to get people to take up landscape restoration because it makes business sense to them. So we'd like to come up with various innovations or financing mechanisms that would be able to enable that to happen. Thank you very much.